This is a breaking news alert. A major FBI operation has resulted in the seizure of $77 million. We are awaiting further details.
February 19th, 2026. 3:47 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Federal authorities announced the largest coordinated drug cartel takedown in Midwest history. $15 million in narcotics seized from a single fortified mansion. $62 million in cash confiscated across 17 locations. 73 suspected cartel operatives arrested. And according to federal investigators, one name at the center of it all, a sitting state governor whose digital signature would later be linked to the most sophisticated drug distribution network the region has ever seen. This is not a border story. This is not a coastal operation. This is the Sinaloa cartel, operating in the frozen heart of America, protected at the highest levels of state government. And what federal agents discovered in the early hours of that February morning would reveal something far worse than drugs or money. It would expose a shadow government built to serve the cartel's empire, right under the noses of millions of Americans. If you think you know how deep corruption can go, you're about to be proven wrong. 4:32 a.m. downtown Minneapolis. The first breach. The city is silent. A thin layer of frost coats the empty streets. No movement, no sirens, just the distant hum of industrial refrigeration units and the occasional flicker of neon bar signs still glowing in the dark. Then, without warning, the silence shatters. FBI tactical units, DIA strike teams, ICE enforcement squads, and Minneapolis SWAT converge on 6 locations simultaneously across the Twin Cities metro area. Blackhawk helicopters hover low over the Mississippi River. Armored vehicles roll through residential neighborhoods with lights off. Over 200 federal agents move like shadows through the pre-dawn fog. The primary target, a sprawling lakefront mansion in the upscale Kenwood neighborhood, less than 3 miles from downtown Minneapolis. From the outside, it looks like any other million-dollar property. Manicured hedges, stone columns, a circular driveway lined with luxury vehicles, but investigators later alleged this mansion was something else entirely, a fortified drug fortress operated by high-ranking members of the Sinaloa cartel. At exactly 4:32 a.m., breaching charges blow the reinforced front doors off their hinges. Flashbangs explode through the ground floor windows. FBI agents in black tactical gear pour into the entry hall, weapons raised, night vision glowing green in the darkness. Federal agents, on the ground, hands visible. Inside, chaos erupts. Suspected cartel operatives scramble through hallways, some clutching duffel bags stuffed with cash, others trying to flush documents down toilets or smash hard drives with hammers. Gunfire cracks through the second-floor library as one suspect attempts to escape through a rear balcony. He's tackled mid-leap by a DIA agent who followed him through a hidden servants' corridor. But it's what agents find in the basement that stops everyone cold. A steel-reinforced vault door, hidden behind a wine rack, electronically sealed and requiring a biometric handprint to open. It takes a breaching team 40 minutes to cut through. When the door finally swings open, the air inside smells like chemicals and plastic wrap. Stacked floor to ceiling, bricks of pure cocaine, individually wrapped kilos of black tar heroin, vacuum-sealed bags of methamphetamine, and according to federal affidavits later filed in district court, over 2.1 million fentanyl pills stamped with cartel insignias and ready for street distribution across the Midwest. The estimated street value, $15 million. All of it stored in a mansion 12 minutes from the Minnesota state capitol. But the drugs are just the beginning. Agents also seize 9 encrypted laptops, 4 external server arrays, and a locked steel briefcase containing what appears to be financial ledgers written in cartel cipher code. One of the seized laptops is still powered on, its screen displaying a live logistics map with routes running through Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana. And in the corner of the screen, a timestamp and a digital authorization signature. The name attached to that signature, investigators would later allege, belongs to Governor Marcus Halvorson, a three-term state executive known for his tough-on-crime rhetoric and Midwest values branding. As dawn breaks over the frozen lake, federal agents load evidence into unmarked vans. The mansion is sealed. The suspects are cuffed and silent. But one senior FBI official, standing in the driveway with his breath fogging in the cold air, says something quietly to his team that no one was supposed to hear. This isn't a drug house. This is a command center. And he's right. 9:15 a.m. FBI Cyber Forensics Division, Minneapolis Field Office. Inside a secure digital investigation lab, 3 forensic analysts sit in front of wall-mounted monitors, their faces lit by cascading lines of decrypted code. It's taken them less than 5 hours to crack the encryption on the seized servers. What they find is staggering. A master operational network investigators internally codenamed Project Frostline, a fully integrated drug distribution and money laundering empire spanning the entire Midwest, digitally coordinated, financially obscured, and according to evidence recovered during the raid, allegedly protected at the state political level. The system is elegant, terrifying, and sophisticated beyond anything federal investigators expected to find this far inland. At the top of the network, shell corporations registered in Nevada, Delaware, and Wyoming. Fake logistics companies with names like Heartland Freight Solutions and Northern Plains Transport LLC. Sham agricultural co-ops. Nonprofit foundations claiming to support migrant worker housing. Even a chain of family-style restaurants scattered across Minnesota and Wisconsin, all listed under a holding company traced back to offshore accounts in Belize and the Cayman Islands. Every entity is a front. Every transaction is disguised. But the digital breadcrumbs are there, hidden in shipping manifests, falsified tax filings, and encrypted financial transfers moving tens of millions of dollars per month through the legitimate economy. And then the analysts find the authorization keys, digital signatures embedded in logistics approvals, route clearances, and security override codes for certain state inspection stations and weigh facilities. Timestamps that match known cartel convoy movements through Minnesota's highway corridors. According to forensic analysis, these signatures appeared to allow cartel trucks loaded with cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamine to bypass inspection points, avoid weigh stations during scheduled maintenance closures, and move freely along Interstate 35 and Interstate 94 without. Triggering law enforcement alerts. And the digital signature on those authorizations, investigators later alleged, repeatedly traces back to the encrypted communications account of Governor Marcus Halvorson. This is not corruption in the traditional sense. This is command-level collusion. This is a state executive allegedly repurposing government infrastructure to serve the logistics needs of the Sinaloa cartel. One investigator stares at the screen, his jaw tight, and mutters to his colleague, "He didn't just take bribes. He built them a highway." The scope is almost impossible to comprehend, but the evidence doesn't lie. And now, investigators realize something even more disturbing. If the network is this sophisticated in Minnesota, how many other states have been quietly infiltrated the same way? The answer to that question is about to unfold in the largest multi-state federal operation in modern DIA history. February 20th, 2026. 5:18 a.m. Joint Federal Command Center, Minneapolis. A massive digital map dominates the wall of the Operations Center. Dozens of red markers pulse across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and South Dakota. Each marker represents a suspected cartel facility, stash house, trafficking hub, or compromised official location tied to Project Frostline. Standing in front of the map, FBI Assistant Director Laura Trask, DIA Regional Commander Vincent Orozco, and ICE Deputy Director Sam Pruitt. Behind them, over 60 federal agents, analysts, and tactical coordinators prepare for what's being called Operation Frozen Empire, a coordinated dawn strike designed to dismantle the entire Midwest distribution network in a single synchronized blow. The numbers are staggering. Over 1,000 federal agents deployed across 5 states, 40 SWAT teams, 18 armored response units, 6 Black Hawk helicopters. And according to sources within the Department of Homeland Security, a U.S. Navy surveillance vessel repositioned on Lake Superior to monitor suspected cartel communications relays operating near the Canadian border. At exactly 6:00 a.m., the operation begins. In Minneapolis, FBI teams storm a suspected cartel superlab hidden inside a decommissioned meatpacking plant on the city's north side. Inside, agents find industrial pill presses, 50-gallon drums of fentanyl precursor chemicals imported from China, and over 400,000 counterfeit prescription pills ready for distribution. 3 suspected cartel chemists are arrested on site. In St. Paul, DEA agents breach a luxury apartment complex where investigators later alleged a regional cartel enforcer had been operating a human trafficking coordination hub, moving undocumented migrants through Minnesota as cover for drug transport routes. Agents seize encrypted phones, fake IDs, and ledgers tracking payments to corrupt truck drivers and border facilitators. In Rochester, ICE teams intercept a cartel convoy moving south on Highway 52. The trucks are disguised as refrigerated food transport. Inside, 200 kilos of cocaine and 70 kilos of black tar heroin, hidden inside hollowed-out frozen meat pallets. The drivers are arrested. Their phones contain direct communication threads with contacts inside the Minnesota Department of Transportation. In Duluth, federal agents raid a suspected migrant smuggling safe house near the Canadian border. According to evidence recovered during the raid, the house had been used to temporarily shelter individuals brought across the border illegally before moving them south as part of cartel labor and distribution networks. And in the quiet suburban town of Edina, just outside Minneapolis, FBI agents surround a sprawling estate owned by a prominent state legislator, a close political ally of Governor Halvorsen. Inside the home's garage, agents discover $62 million in cash bundled in plastic wrap and stored in climate-controlled storage bins. The money, investigators later alleged, represented cartel profits waiting to be laundered through the shell companies tied to Project Frostline. By noon, the raids are complete. The damage to the Sinaloa cartel's Midwest operations is catastrophic. But the arrests don't stop with cartel operatives. Federal agents also detain 4 Minnesota State Patrol officers, 2 county sheriffs, a logistics coordinator from the State Transportation Department, and a senior aide from the governor's own office. All of them, according to evidence collected during the investigation, appeared to have been secretly assisting the cartel's operations in exchange for regular cash payments. One federal agent, standing in the cold February wind outside the Edina estate, looks at the rows of seized cash and says quietly to a reporter off the record, "The underworld just took more damage in 6 hours than it has in the last 6 years." But the worst revelation is still to come. February 21st, 2026. FBI Evidence Analysis Unit. Investigators are now deep into the seized servers, financial records, and internal communications recovered from the mansion and the legislator's estate. And what they find is a portrait of infiltration so deep, so deliberate, that it shakes even the most experienced federal agents. According to documents recovered during the raids, the Sinaloa cartel didn't just bribe officials. They embedded themselves into the operational structure of state law enforcement and government oversight. Encrypted emails suggest patrol schedules were shared with cartel logistics coordinators hours before convoys moved. Way station maintenance logs showed suspiciously timed closures that matched known drug transport windows. Internal memos indicated certain highway patrol officers were reassigned to desk duty during high-value shipments, allegedly to prevent accidental interdiction. And then investigators find something that makes the entire room go silent. A leaked internal calendar from Governor Halvorsen's office, cross-referenced with cartel convoy logs recovered from the mansion. The correlation is too precise to be coincidence. According to forensic analysis, every time the governor attended a private economic development meeting in a border county or rural town, a major cartel shipment moved through that region within 48 hours. The pattern repeats, over and over and over. One veteran DEA agent reviewing the timeline shakes his head and says to his team, "This isn't a dirty cop taking cash on the side. This is a parallel enforcement system. They built a second police force, and we didn't even know it. Honest officers, men and women who served their communities with integrity, feel betrayed. Some break down when they learn their own commanders were allegedly on cartel payroll. Others refuse to believe it until they see the evidence themselves. But the evidence is overwhelming. And now, federal authorities face the difficult task of rebuilding trust in a system that was quietly gutted from the inside. As one Minneapolis police sergeant says in a recorded internal interview, "I thought we were the good guys. Turns out, some of us were wearing the badge for the cartel." The arrests continue, but the damage to public trust will take years to repair. February 22, 2026. Federal Intelligence Briefing. Washington, D.C. senior officials from the FBI, D8s, and Department of Justice gather in a secure briefing room to review the full scope of Project Frostline. And what they learn is more disturbing than anyone anticipated. The Midwest operation wasn't isolated. It was a prototype. According to seized communications analyzed by federal cyber intelligence, the Sinaloa cartel had been experimenting with a new infiltration model, one that didn't rely on violence or intimidation, but on political ambition and financial seduction. Investigators later alleged the cartel identified ambitious state-level officials in economically struggling regions and offered them a deal, campaign funding, business opportunities, and political protection in exchange for quiet logistical cooperation. Minnesota, with its strategic location between the Canadian border and major Midwest cities, was allegedly chosen as the test site. And according to the evidence recovered, the system worked flawlessly for years. The network moved an estimated 300 kilos of cocaine, 200 kilos of heroin, and 500 kilos of methamphetamine per week through the Midwest corridor. All of it distributed to Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis, and Milwaukee. All of it allegedly moving under the protective cover of compromised state infrastructure. But investigators also discover something even more chilling in the final encrypted files recovered from the mansion. A proposal. A long-term strategic plan labeled Phase 2 Territorial Integration. The document, investigators later alleged, outlined a vision for turning Minnesota into a permanent cartel logistics hub, a secure, politically protected territory where the Sinaloa cartel could operate with near immunity. The plan included expanding influence into city councils, county boards, judicial appointments, and even state law enforcement leadership positions. In other words, the cartel wasn't just infiltrating the system. According to the evidence, they were allegedly redesigning it for long-term control. One DA's analyst, reading the document aloud during the briefing, pauses and looks up at the room. They weren't planning to hide, they were planning to govern. The room falls silent. Because everyone in that room understands the same terrifying truth, if this had gone undetected for another 5 years, the Sinaloa cartel might have succeeded. Final thoughts. Power doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides behind press conferences, charity fundraisers, and campaign slogans. Sometimes it wears a suit and a smile and a flag pin on its lapel. And sometimes it quietly sells a state to the highest bidder. But it can. And according to federal investigations across the country, it has. The cost isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in lives destroyed by fentanyl, families shattered by addiction, neighborhoods abandoned to gang violence, communities that trusted their leaders and were betrayed at the highest levels. This is not entertainment. This is a warning. If you're still watching, tap like so more people see this story. Comment expose if you want this kind of corruption dragged into the light. And share this with someone who still believes the system can't be bought. Because ignorance is exactly what allows this to happen. The Sinaloa cartel is real. Political corruption is real. And the infiltration of American institutions by organized crime is happening right now in ways most people will never see. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and never assume that power left unchecked will police itself, because it won't.